Okay, and the same as with your CLA, the CLT, the major resource for doing well on the certification is using their textbook. And of course, that's available to you. I've got a link in announcements, and it's at Opus Work under materials. So we're in chapter 3, and there is a PowerPoint that comes with each one of these chapters. It just kind of gives you bullet information about what's in that chapter. But you need to get into this textbook to get a deeper understanding so that you'll do better on the actual exam. So this talks about a SKU, and it's for a nail. And these numbers, each one of them in that SKU, give more detailed description of that item. And you can see that same type of information on any kind of item that would differentiate it from another component. Just on something simple as a nail, it has classification for what kind of a shank it has, what kind of length, if it's galvanized or if it's stainless steel or tin or whatever. The point, what kind of if it's got a chisel or a flat blunt point or what have you. And then if it comes in a coil, like where a pneumatic gun or electric gun can actually shoot the nails into wood, it tells what size of a coil it is. And then it tells what type of specific tool that this would fit in. So that's a lot of information on just a nail. You can imagine what they put on there for like electronic components, like a starter or an alternator or some type of automotive component, just to make sure that the right product is listed for customers and for shippers and folks to all be on the same language. So when you're picking, this is where accuracy comes into play. And it's the most laborious part as far as physical labor of our entire industry is picking. And if you've got human error, like if people put the wrong item in the order that the customer wanted, then there's the expense of sending it back to you and the time delay, and then the opportunity for that customer to use that product if it was something in retail where they lost a sale, or if it was something in manufacturing where they couldn't complete a assembly of something. There's a trust thing there, a reputation that your 5-star rating goes down real quick when you're selecting the wrong stuff. And so we've tried to automate this process to make it a little bit more goof proof and to take some of the physical labor out of it. And so in these big operations like Amazon, what we just looked at, they put things that have to be handled by people in smaller containers. They don't want to exceed 15 pounds if you ever happen to move something that for weight. And they automate it where it's on a shelf that brings it to you, so you don't have to go out and search in a warehouse to try to find that item. But knowing how to do it in the most crude method, like there's a shelf out there, the item has been placed on it when we brought it in, where do I find it? And how many do they want? You need to know that basic level of it before you start using this other automation. So when it says that they spend 50 to 70% of their time, pickers, that's people who are actually putting these orders together, moving from one location to the next. And so you can imagine if a warehouse has all these aisles in it, and then each aisle has a place on the shelf for a product, that if there's things that we often order together, that it would make sense to have that thing next to the other item that's offered with it. So that's called an ABC inventory. And so if it's something that's commonly ordered, they list the inventory and they lay out the warehouse where they put those together. And if it's something like batteries, and then they have each of the different sizes of batteries, because they go on so many different things, then they make something that's part of most orders, usually at the beginning of the aisle. So if you're picking batteries and then you're going to go find a camera, or you're going to go find a remote control or whatever, you always know where the batteries are, and it's an easy access to get to it. So the layout of the warehouse has a lot to do with how much travel time or how much time you spend going to find that object. And the use of automation, they have what they call a talk man. It's a headset that will tell you what aisle to go to and what shelf it's on to find your object, or pick to light, which will have a flashing light down an aisle that you go to, and there's your item. And then when you press that button, after you've took the item off for your order, and the next light comes on. And so you just follow the blinking lights. That's very useful. Both of those are, when it comes to non-English speaking employees. It bridges that barrier, the language barrier, because the template, when you're using the TalkMan, is in your native language. You recorded the commands in your language, and so you get to hear your own language in the headset. And if the pick-to-light, it's just following the flashing lights. It's probably the least human error way of running a pick. So
what if you have multiple pickers, like say 100 pickers, and they're all following flashing lights? Doesn't that make the error rate go up? Because what if they accidentally pick the wrong item that somebody else was supposed to pick?
Well, and when they're in that large of that's a good question, that large of a unit where there's 100 people picking, I think the most I've ever seen is a picker rate is about an 80, but I've not been in an Amazon to count them. I know there's way more than that, but normally they have zones. And so let's say that you're working in electronics, then there would be fewer pickers in that particular zone. They all wouldn't be concentrated in one area in the warehouse. But on our pick-to-light system, the example one we have in our lab, we have 4 different lights. And so you could have a different color based on what your employee number is or your team that you're on. You could only be looking for yellow flashing lights, whereas somebody standing right next to you in that aisle be looking for green flashing lights, and so on. So it is limited for fewer people operating in the same zone than maybe the TalkMan, or just flat getting a paper list of stuff that has to be picked. But as far as efficiencies and bridging language barriers, in some instances, that's the highest priorities. And so that's why they go to that particular system. So it talks about the processes ran by these warehouse management systems. And those are software systems designed. They know where everything went to when it came in the door, as far as where it was stored on shelves. And so it's like a library card, basically, of telling you where to go find it. And then each time you take something off of that shelf to fulfill an order, it maintains the inventory to know when a replenishment is needed for that particular product. And so it also tells you what door to deliver it to based on where that customer's items are going to be loaded. And so it's pretty high speed, and it has other components like time that employees take to pick the order, the amount of pieces that are in that order, the cube, the weight, all of that stuff's tracked by this warehouse management system. So you can imagine it's pretty expensive to be able to buy that technology and use that technology. As everything else, there's been a move to pay for use. And so instead of getting all of this hardware and software invested, which 6 months down the road, it's probably going to be somewhat obsolete, there'll be something newer and shinier. You can use cloud-based software that is a per use. And so even a mom and pop's setup with like 10 rows of merchandise could have the most high-speed warehouse management system, because they're only paying, say 2 cents per order to use that particular software instead of going out and spending the hundreds of thousands of dollars to have it installed for their use. So that's where a lot of the software is going to take the big bite, what you have to invest initially, out of the equation. And then that mom and pop software can be connected to a supplier or to a customer base that's from a larger retail site or a larger manufacturing site. And so it's useful for everybody to be using the same type of software so they can communicate across platforms and across geography. If I'm Amazon and I have some super duper Amazon 10,000 software and nobody else has it, it's only internally that I'd take advantage of it. If I've got a warehouse management system that is industry norm or it's what everybody's using, then it makes it more valuable. So that's why they got it to the per use, so they can spread it out more and more people are using it. So they have a more in-depth description about the picking technology that we were talking about. This is a picture of the platform that the picker's standing on, and then he's taking items on the second, third, fourth level shelves. And that's a little bit more wacky when it comes to safety. So that pick's probably going to take more time. And there's probably fewer pickers because now there's not a 2-lane in that aisle there. You see it's only got room for one piece of equipment. And so only one person at a time could go down that aisle. So that limits the number of employees you could have working in this particular area. But for some setups, this is the ideal way to go. You got less warehouse because these are so much closer and higher the shelving is. And so there's a savings there on what they pay for the actual space. So this single area, single pick order, that's the most basic version of picking, and it's the most labor intensive and it's the most inefficient. But it's like I order something online for groceries from Kroger's or Walmart, and there's a person that actually goes and does my shopping for me and then tell me what parking spot to go to, and they bring my groceries out to me. It's basically the same thing. That picker that's in the store that's getting your order so you don't have to get out and go in. They do the same function in a warehouse or distribution center, but it's a single pick if they're bringing you your order that you ordered. Now, if you've been in a Walmart or something and seen these folks doing it, you'll see that they have probably 10 or 12 of those blue crates on there. And if they go back to, say, the milk section, and they've got 4 customers that they're picking, they'll pick, 4 of them wanted milk, then they get 4 different orders fulfilled at that place that they're picking up the milk. So depending on how much lead time they give them, if they give them, your order will be ready in 10 minutes, they can't do anybody else's but yours. But if they say, order it now and it'll be ready by this afternoon, by 2 o'clock, then they could run 6 or 8 orders at the same time and be more efficient. But that single area, single pick is used in very small warehouses, and it's used in these apps where you can have your groceries or whatever brought to your car. So pick zone, it's where I talked about, we had in our food warehouses a freezer, and then you had a place for vegetation that needed to be kept moist. It was like the Everglades, you had spray going all the time. And then you had dry areas where you would have stuff that was in packaging that couldn't get wet or frozen. And so depending on the pick zone that you're assigned, it basically cuts down on traffic because people aren't going from one end of the warehouse to the other. It reduces time because you're only going to one location and all your stuff is in that one zone. And then you probably can memorize it as far as what's down what aisle. After you've been there a couple of days, you know exactly where the majority of the things are in your zone. You're not trying to do memorize an entire warehouse. And this is the pick-the-light system that this person's using. And based on the order that they're pulling off the shelf there, You can see this is in a large warehouse because they got one item sitting on that shelf. If this was a industrial Amazon-ish, you would have pallets full of that one item at that area. And so a pick the light is for a smaller setup. And once they have the red screen that's rolling there is telling them how many items to pick. And once they pick it, they press the light to shut it off. This can be used when you are putting away items. Say you just got a truckload that came into your receiving side. When you put the item on that shelf, you know, the computer tells you go down to the flashing lights. And when you get there with this item on that screen, it's going to say out of stock or whatever, or one item remaining. You put your 10 items on there, and then they let you enter it in on that pin pad that you put 10 more items, and then you'll see on the screen that it added those 10 to the inventory. So it can be pick to light or put to light where you're putting things on the shelf. This multi-order batch, we talked about that. That's this Walmart or Kroger person that has these different blue carts or cases in one basket, and they're picking more than one person's order. And it can be divided up by zones, like say your order is supposed to be picked up at 2 o'clock. And so by, what time is it now? 11:30. So by 12 o'clock, all the stuff that's not perishable, you know, all your dry goods, paper goods, all of that stuff, it's already been picked and it's staged in the front somewhere to get it ready to take out to you. And so around 12:30, they have another zone pick for the stuff that's refrigerated or frozen, because they don't have that much alternate freezer space to put the items that haven't been picked up yet. Ideally, they're picking that right as they're going to deliver to your car. So they haven't had to pay for another refrigeration space or freezer space to hold your order while they're waiting for it to be sent. And that's the same thing in a huge warehouse, a food warehouse or whatever. If I'm picking a truck that has frozen items on it, and I'm going to put it on a refrigerated trailer, the front of the trailer is the coldest part. That's where the actual reefer or the refrigeration unit comes in first. And so normally the frozen stuff is picked first, and it's put in it's loaded immediately, and then they put up a partition, an insulated wall. So it's basically like a portable freezer for that ice cream or meat or whatever to stay at the right temperature. And so depending on how orders run, you could have a whole truck of just refrigerated stuff, and they'd have a lot of people selecting, so they could fill up that trailer and get it sealed and gone. Or you could have just, you know, 2 pallets of frozen stuff. They put it on the trailer, they put the partition up, and then it maintains the right temperature. But they couldn't put it at the end of the trailer at the after everything else was picked, because the back of the trailer is the warmest, even in a refrigerated situation. So we already talked about pick to order. One picker is picking for one order. Then we got batch picking. A picker assembles all the items for a group of orders. And so I'm back there getting milk for like 6 customers. And then we got pick the line or pick the zero. So if say we got something on sale at Walmart, it's what's a holiday? Mother's Day is coming up. So we got these Mother's Day items that everybody's ordering, and they want to come and pick it up. So if I'm doing a pick by line or pick to zero, and I'm getting, say, flowers that people have ordered to be picked up, I'm going to pick those all until it's down to 0, and then they'll replenish it. They'll bring in some more flowers to meet the demand. And so it goes down to where it's 0. And this talks about how much effort it takes to put together an order. 55% is traveling between different locations. 20% is reaching in, bending, sorting, packing, and documenting what you've actually picked. 15% is searching for the pick location. And so if you got automation, that's 15% that you save on selecting your order. And then 10% is extracting material from the locations. So if you got automated dispensers or advanced technologies that have to read barcodes or whatever, that's about 10% of the pick. So our engineers that are part of our industry, they look at ways to reduce the time that each employee takes to do those different tasks. And that's results into higher customer satisfaction because we gave them a quicker order selection. And efficiencies and accuracy are what the main goals are there. So they talk about pick by label. That's the Stone Age version, where you actually have a sheet that tells you where to find something in a warehouse. And they're all these labels on this sheet. And as you find it, you peel off the label, you stick it on the box, you put it on your pallet, and you go to the next thing on your sheet of labels. And then when you get to the end, if there was something that wasn't on the shelf, this page of labels, anywhere there's still a label, tells them that that's what's missing out of the order. So the picking part of it is what you can do with no training. I mean, they'll show you how to do that for their organization. So there's not an education requirement or an experience requirement, because that's a high turnover. People, it's labor intensive. And so, I mean, I actually went to help them try to find folks that would stay in that particular position for longer. About 2 years is the max time that they hope to keep you working in that position. So by then they've either moved you up through training and advancement, or you've reached a plateau where they have to pay you more money. But I actually would find folks that were interested in like bodybuilding, weightlifting, and say, you want to get paid for lifting weight? And they go around like getting a good workout today, you know, when they come to work for this place. For them, it was an 8-hour workout, and they take all the heavy loads, like those 20-pound turkeys, where there were, you know, 2 or 4 or 6 in a case, and you'd have to lift that or have somebody help you, 2 people lift it. That was their version of fun. So trying to find somebody that thinks that's fun is a real stretch. And we were able to go to like high school sports and have folks that were wrestlers or weightlifting, football camps, stuff like that, and say, would you guys like a part-time job this summer? And it'd be part of your workout routine. And so there were folks that actually enjoyed it, but it was a temporary thing. It wasn't something they were going to do more than, you know, a couple months or whatever. So order batching, this is when you put these orders together and you try to keep wherever you're going to go select within 100 feet. So this is what I was talking about. It's items that are normally ordered together, or if you're running some kind of promotion and you know that people are going to buy these items because they're in a discount or what have you. And it talks about examples of taking it down from 100 foot to 50 foot to 25 foot based on where that's actually put in the warehouse. And then say I'm putting together this big order that's going to go out to a customer. You can actually bring stuff that's in the, like say an obscure item that people don't usually order. Maybe they sell 5 of them a month. And so they go to the end of an aisle and they bring that item up to a forward location. Say it's on a pallet and it's sitting at a door waiting to be loaded. They have picked forward locations for that, so that they got all of these obscure or sometimes not often picked items that are way back in the inventory somewhere. They bring those forward so they can join the majority of the pick and have all of the items put together. And we talked about barcodes. Those can't have any data that changes. It's put on there whenever the item is produced or it's shipped initially from manufacturing. And then we have radio data terminals that can actually pick up these RFID chips. You see those, they look like they're about the size of a matchbook or something. Now these RFID chips are microscopic. I mean, they're like little dots. And an example of that is the phone that you have. The parts, the components that are in there have these micro RFID chips. You probably got 50 of those in the phone that you've got right now. And you don't have 50 chips this size in that phone. It's their little bitty micro dots. And so based on the size of the item you're trying to keep in the inventory, these would be useless if it was something that was smaller than them. So they had to reduce the size that these tags took to use it to keep the inventory up. They still have, if it's a very, very small part, it's in a bag or it's in some type of a container, a box or whatever. And it says there's 500 of them in here. And so when somebody selects from that, that RFID chip is updated and says, okay, now there's 400 in here, or now there's 300 of them in here. So it still does have the drawbacks of limited by size. All right, this is the what I was talking about, the Talkman system. It's a headset and it's about the size of your phone. It's something that you can put in your pocket or wear on a clip on your pants or something. And these are getting smaller and smaller. And a lot of places are using iPads or something similar to that, where but this is what they call a hands-free option. Just like the Pick the Light, I don't have to carry this iPad around in my hand or some type of a scanning gun. These allow you to have both hands to be able to maneuver merchandise. And when you get through, you're going to take your order to a staging area, and it's usually near the dock that it's going to be loaded onto a trailer. And at the staging area, you're going to either have it manually scanned, and that's where they have somebody that has a printout of the order, and it's got all the barcodes and the SQ numbers on it. And then they can point it at each of the boxes individually to see if it's 100%. Or they run under this halo, this arch. They send the pallets under that, and everything that's on that pallet gets counted and checked to make sure that it matches what was supposed to go on that order. The more volume that you use, the more the technology helps out. And as you've seen in other videos, like Amazon and FedEx and these folks that have high volume single packages, they have those halos set up to where it's automation that scans for accuracy. But there is a manual way that you do it with a handheld device. And they can go to each one of the different boxes and make sure that it's what's supposed to be in there. So the preparations, you want to make sure that whatever is on that pallet is secured, that it's stacked properly. And we show pictures of the right way and the wrong way. And I told you about the rodeo where we have competition against different organizations so you can put the tightest pallet together the quickest. So they look to see if it's the load is protected. They may wrap some kind of a plastic shrink wrap around it. They may rebox it. They may put it in a bigger container to make sure that it's not damaged or stuff doesn't fall off of it. And then they talk about kitting, where they put together, okay, here's the batteries that go with this camera, that goes with these cables, that go with these mounting brackets. And so they assemble all of these components that are dependent on each other for the product to operate, and they'll put those in some type of container and they kit that together. So marshaling or staging, it's basically, okay, I've got a 12 o'clock truck that's going to be leaving. I got a 12:15 truck, 12:30, 12:45, leaving from door 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so all of these have a priority that's set on them. Like the first one that leaves should be our priority to get all the stuff ready for it to be loaded. And so that's kind of what sets the tempo as to where you stage your stuff. And so you're just bringing it to a certain point where another individual will take charge of loading it on a trailer. And so inbound, it has critical activities to make sure that when it comes off the truck, it's staged and it's protected, but we know where it's at so it can get put into the inventory. Outbound, it's important to get it close as you can to the dock that it's going to actually be loaded from. Let's say that it's Thanksgiving Tuesday and it's a frozen food warehouse. Majority of the stuff that's sold on Tuesday before Thanksgiving, people are waiting till last minute, is turkeys. And so they would have a staging area with just turkeys. And so they look at their historical data and they look at the demands from the stores or the orders that were placed, and they find out they're going to sell 5,000 turkeys tomorrow that have to be shipped today. And so 5,000 turkeys is a whole aisle full of meat. And so instead of having people go out there and bring back those turkeys one at a time so that they can meet those store demands, they stage them up in the center of the warehouse towards the dock doors in the most coolest area outside of the refrigeration. So people can get to them a lot quicker, or they'll just assign one picker. Hey, go get 6 turkeys for door 2, 8 for door 3, 20 for door 4. And it just cuts down on the time it would take for each person to go get one of something they know they're going to sell 5,000 of. So that was chapter 3. We want to stop our recording. We'll bring up our next okay, I just want to pause it perhaps. Okay, we're going to bring up the chapter 4, which talks about this distribution center that's in for Walgreens, and it has 2 parts to it, but they're pretty high speed. Walgreens, deals with a lot more inventory for pharmaceutical items and medical, health and beauty aid, but they've kind of got the right idea on how to put this together. So I'll let them go now. See if I got the play button going. Here we go. I don't see it playing. There we go.
At Walgreens Distribution Center in Anderson, South Carolina, nearly half of the workers have a physical or mental disability. The design of the automated systems helps these workers, and really all the workers in Anderson, to do their jobs quickly and accurately. And we're talking about a huge amount of product that they must process.
We receive about 3 miles of pallets of merchandise that they were stacked up. If we stack all those cases that come out of here by day, that's about 35 miles end on end. And the trailers that we send from here every day that go out to our stores, we add all those miles, they go 1.5 times around the world.
Let's take a look at what makes this operation tick. The designer of this facility, Schaefer Systems, put a lot of very cool warehouse technology here. This unit is called a tilt tray sorter. Cases of products and packaged items in plastic containers are deposited under these moving trays. There are 274 trays here, and they circle around in a loop until they come to a workstation where the product is assigned to go. At the precise moment, the tray tilts and the product is released to a chute that gently drops into the workstation below. Here, a worker removes the original packaging and deposits the contents into plastic totes so that they can be stored in automated equipment. And as you will soon see, using the totes makes it easier to select the goods to fill orders. The empty waste cartons are dropped onto a conveyor that takes them to recycling. This area is called an automated storage and retrieval system. It covers some 144,000 square feet and has over 34,500 slots where pallets can be stored in some 15 levels of racking. The system is divided into 10 pick aisles manned by 11 storage cranes. These cranes can automatically move product in and out of storage as needed. Some of the pallets are placed on the bottom 2 levels where workers can access the cartons on them. These are known as pick faces because cases are picked from them in order to fill orders. Each of the picking zones here are identified by pictures that make it easier for workers with reading and cognitive disabilities to know that they are at the correct workstations. These zones are named for vegetables. Another area of the facility uses animal names. A worker moves through the zones, followed by these robotic vehicles that stop wherever the worker needs to select product. He removes cases and places them on the vehicle. Once picking is done, the vehicle automatically moves to a discharge station, where the load is removed and conveyed to a staging area until ready to ship to the stores. Remember those totes that were filled at the tilt tray sorter? Well, those eventually moved to a very large operation known as the Schaefer picking system. The totes first are conveyed to these carousel storage units. There are 104 of them in Anderson, And they all have stacked slots that rotate around a central point, 86,000 storage slots in total. When product is needed, the carousel rotates to bring the tote forward where it can be automatically retrieved and moved by conveyor to one of the 26 goods-to-person workstations. Here, individual items are removed from the totes and packed together into shipping containers. David Hill is autistic. He has worked here since 2007. A source tote containing products to be picked comes into his workstation, where several shipping containers that will head to stores are waiting to receive that product. The system tells David how many of each item to remove from the source tote and place into the shipping containers. Lights guide David to show which totes should receive the items. A light sensor detects his motions. Each time he reaches for an item, the sensor sees that movement and counts down how many more moves or picks he has left and shows that number to David on the display. This type of technology is known as a goods-to-person system because David could just stand there and the work comes to him.
Well, what's like work here? It's how hard work. It's fast paced.
Once the product is selected, the finished order containers are automatically stacked and made ready for shipping. Many of the products are placed onto these rolling carts, which roll right into the truck trailer and then roll right into the store. They help to make restocking store shelves very easy.
This building is the most productive building we have in the chain. Part of that's the automation. But the workforce, because we know what the workforce with disabilities can do, we know what the workforce without it, there is no difference.
Some of that success is due to the dedication of the team at Anderson. Absenteeism is very low, and people stay on the job, with employee turnover about half that of other facilities.
Walk through the building, talk to management, talk to the people on the floor. We can say, yes, Virginia, there is a second. It all works out for better.
In the chance, we actually be a productive human being. Historically, we have been seen as persons to be taken care of. Now we are taking care of families. We have a purpose. We're showing the world what we can do and giving the opportunity. I really think I have the coolest job in the world.
Okay, let's take a look at the questions that went along with this assignment and see what comes out of that. Let's see if I can get the right page. Or let's do part 2. That's the most time efficient version here. Here we go.
Walgreens is one of the most recognized names in the United States. It's the largest drugstore chain with over 8,300 stores in all 50 states. Here in Anderson, South Carolina, nearly 800 of those stores are fed every day using a unique combination of a high degree of technology and a very diverse workforce. It results in what many consider to be the coolest job in the world. From the outside, Anderson looks like any other distribution facility. 700,000 square feet, an attractive exterior for a warehouse. But inside, it is quite different. Here are some of the workers at Anderson. Notice anything different about them? Would you be surprised to learn that over 40% of the staff here have a physical or mental disability? Well, that's the idea. You shouldn't be able to notice any difference. That's because Walgreens, along with the company's warehouse design partner, Schaefer Systems, built this facility to allow both disabled and non-disabled team members to do their work side by side, with everyone meeting very high standards of performance. Meet Angela Mackey. Angela has cerebral palsy. It is her job to recruit the disabled workforce here.
I don't think people understand how hard it is for individuals with disabilities to get a job. I have a master's degree in for that GPA. Nobody wanted to hire me. Walgreens telling me a level playing field. We have changed our ability. We're given the opportunity to prove what we can do before we judge.
The idea for hiring the disabled was the brainchild of Randy Lewis. He is retiring now as the man in charge of Walgreens distribution, and he's also the father of a child with autism.
But as a father, I saw these kids in these special ed programs growing up with all kinds of disabilities, not just autism, but CP and all different types of abilities, and started thinking about what's going to happen to these kids after they get out of school. People with disabilities die a death of 1,000 cuts. That's something I know as an employer, something I know as a parent. We went through a phase of building a lot of distribution centers, and we had a little bit of extra time to design a whole new generation. And we got the idea of saying we've used automation successfully. Why don't we use it to enable a group of people who have never had a job before? People with disabilities.
Since this program started, Walgreens has become a model that others are now copying. Lowe's, Procter & Gamble, and Best Buy are just some of the companies that have either opened or plan to open facilities designed to accommodate disabled workforces.
As a parent with a child with a disability, the first thing you're aware of is you're limited in your time on earth. What am I going to do after I'm gone? That's a clock that keeps on ticking in a parent's mind. When they hear about this, that this is an inclusive environment, here's a future for my child that I never would have envisioned otherwise. People have moved across the country.
Desiree Neff is one of those people. She and her son moved from California to work at Walgreens. She has a muscular disease that causes her to lose her balance, and her son is legally blind.
We used to live in San Diego, and we were sent a newspaper article about the groundbreaking of this building and what it was doing, the pilot program. And both my son and myself have disabilities, and we decided to come out here and give it a shot. And it's been life-changing. Here, the sky's the limit, and he's made so much progress. He's actually married. He got a home. He bought a home. He's got a driver's license. He's got a car. I mean, it's just meant him being completely independent.
The chance to earn a living and be self-sufficient is something most of us take for granted. For those who work here, it is life-changing, and the enthusiasm is infectious.
They love their job. They're happy to be here. They actually help motivate me. Monday mornings, I'm not a morning person. I hate Mondays. But when team members walk up to you and they're happy just to be here to have a job, it changes you.
Just because many of the workers are disabled does not mean that their jobs are any easier than for non-disabled people. This is a fast-paced, productive distribution center where high performance is expected of all workers. Everyone contributes to the team here.
So in this building, we started off saying, there is no them. It's just us. And so we made that sign and we put it in every building to remind us that we're more alike, a lot more than we are different.
When Movement returns in a moment, we will take a look at the sophisticated automation at Walgreens that helps make high levels of achievement possible for all workers.
Okay, so the questions that came with this assignment, it says, what's unique about Walgreens Distribution Center in Anderson, South Carolina?
Yeah, 40% of the workforce are people with the like special needs, you know, like special mental and physical disabilities.
Which I
Okay.
think is absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
It's groundbreaking. I love it.
and that shows what technology will do. It will make things that are less physically demanding. And face it, if no matter who we are, we can have a bad day and make mistakes. And this tries to make the process, removes a lot of human error out of it. So it's got how do employees know what to pick for orders?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I understand why he started this company because, you know, his son and stuff, but other companies that are following like P&G and stuff, do they follow this because it is like a meaningful thing to do, or is it more towards the tax incentives and kind of things like that?
I mean, I don't know what their personal motivations are, but there's only so many people between 18 and 60, the workforce in the US. and there's a growing number that have different types of needs.
Mhm.
And to engage that untapped workforce pool, it was just a necessity. I mean, right now, if you can drive 10 feet in any city and not see a help wanted sign, I challenge you, where did you drive to? We have a high demand for employees. There's more jobs than there are people to do them. And so this is just tapping a whole new employee base. And they're finding that there's really some dignity and pride that comes with having a job, no matter who you are. And that folks that have been marginalized or they've been overlooked in the past have a high appreciation of being able to provide for themselves. And so they've turned out to be the most dedicated and the most efficient. I
Loyal.
mean, they do really well. So it's just the automation that was developed made this a reality that maybe in the past, wouldn't have been feasible. But there's major companies like Skillcraft. 100% of their workforce have disabilities. They're blind, or they have missing limbs, or they have some type of a issue. And I know my involvement in trying to find folks for that is for disabled veterans. And here's people that serve their country and through no fault of their own have been injured to where they can't work a regular 9 to 5. And so trying to find companies that have accommodations basically is what we're talking about, that they have technology and they have entrances and doorways and stuff that are set up for folks that have to have other wheelchairs or different types of mechanical assistance to get around. I try to represent disabled veterans when I talk to these industries that are starting up, to not exclude them from selection, because they're dedicated enough to go get shot at. You don't think they could come to work for you on Monday morning? I mean, it's just crazy, the talent that's being wasted there. So yeah, that's that one hit close to home for me. Okay, so chapter 4 covers pull up our right screen here. Chapter 4 covers our packing and shipping. And this week we have a home project for you to do. It's the egg drop. And I love sharing those videos or the pictures with you folks after we do that exercise, because there's some looks like a wacky racer kind of stuff going on where you folks have invented different types of packaging to make sure that your egg makes it. I can tell you that I think during Easter, this kind of hit a couple weeks after Easter. People have boiled eggs. They've tried to sneak those in. I said, wasn't that decorated, that one that you dropped? But they also have these different types of prize eggs that are egg shaped. And I don't know what the brand name is for nylons. I think it's Legs, where they sell you a nylon in an egg shaped type package. But they were actually putting the raw egg inside of these prize eggs, or these containers that nylons were in, and they would wrap them up with either their old nylons or bubble wrap or tissue or whatever. And those seem to get the egg to the bottom of the drop and still be in one piece. But then the question comes, we're looking at the screen here about packaging. If we were talking about this egg drop exercise, that first stage, the single packaging for each of the items, it needs to be something that's conducive to put into the next level, the secondary packaging. So if I've got all these single eggs that are put inside a bigger egg, trying to put those into another type of a packaging, like a box or a pallet or what have you, that would probably be problematic. And so you actually want to try to package it in something that's square or rectangular or what have you, where you can put many of those together inside a secondary carton or a case. And then it talks about the third layer, which is the transportation of the package. So it would be usually a pallet, but it can be inside a big tub or like a wire basket or a barrel. depending on what type of packing material that you are, or what type of material you're moving, would dictate what kind of secondary and how it will be transported. How would we be able to move it mechanically with some type of machine in larger volume? So you'll probably enjoy that egg drop thing, and bring your family in on it, have your kids help you do it, and don't be afraid to fail. I mean, you get the same credit whether it's busted or not, but the ideal is that it's dropped and it's not busted. And if you didn't know, I do have like 26 or 28 chickens, and so I was donating the eggs every year to the classroom. So don't worry about buying eggs. I'll bring those in because they come every day, you know, in my chicken hoop. So I bring those in, and whoever had the most wacky setup for how they protected the egg, I gave them all the eggs that I brought in that day. So if somebody had fresh eggs that were a day, you know, born, and they come back, oh man, those are the best, freshest eggs I've ever had. But I can't do that for you folks right now. You've seen how long it took me to mail you your books. By the time you got them, they'd probably be hatched. They'd be live chickens. So we talk about
just for FYI, the CLA book, the first one, I'm missing 3 chapters, 5, 6, 7.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran them through the printer here, the copier. That is some scary stuff. All right, so I can send you another one. Anybody else have that happen on theirs? Okay, I can send you another one. Say again.
I got mine and I'm not missing anything.
No, and everything, anything. I'm good.
I still never got mine.
What in the world? How does half the people get them? Okay, so how about over in the text box, chat box, give me your names if I still need to send you another additional. So I've sent 2, but I'm over at campus today, and I've got a copy machine here. I'll make a 3rd attempt to make sure everybody gets those, because having the CLA and CLT in print for folks makes it a little bit easier. So in the chat box, if you'll type in, I need a copy, I'll make sure I take care of that before I leave here today. All right, so now why do we have packaging in these different instances? Well, it's to protect against shock, like it being dropped and moved around. And there's some electronics that that if they're jarred, or if they have some type of a movement on them, it could make them not be calibrated. There could be certain real fine tuning in there. And then for compression, that's to keep something from crushing it. So if there's something that's like an egg and you stack something on top of that, even if it's another egg, you want to make sure that the packaging keeps that from being crushed. And then vibration. Again, I think about glassware and different types of, even if it's something that's like potato chips, something that could be vibrated and they'd start breaking up. So you have to have packaging that would protect it from vibration. Depending on how it's being shipped, like by air, there's not a whole lot of vibration there, or compression or shock, but there could be heat and cold depending on how it's in the aircraft, and by elevation. You know, so if there's certain things that you're 10,000 feet up in the air, it would make that product malfunction, or it would cause it harm. So then we got moisture. That's kind of a no-brainer. My hard drive did not need fabric softener poured on it, so they didn't pack it to protect against moisture. I mean, if they just had to put both of those in one package, which I asked why, you'd think that they would really double, triple, quadruple waterproof the fabric softener, and they would triple package the hard drive to make sure that those two, there was no moisture escaped or no moisture absorbed. Then we got heat and cold. So depending on what you're transporting and the means of transportation, probably the roughest way to send something is by truck, and it has to go on a truck no matter how you ship it. We don't have airports in our back of our warehouses. Sometimes we got rails where they can put it on a train in the back of the warehouse. But wherever it's going to the customer, everybody doesn't have rail running to their business. So you're going to have a truck involved no matter how you ship, even if it's by ship. So you have to go with having packing to protect it from the worst case scenario of how it's going to be transported. And that's truck. I mean, there's been major advances in suspensions in the trailers and the roadways, depending on what city you're going to, have pretty good surfaces. But those big chuck holes and speed bumps and those turns when you're getting on and off ramps to get on major roads, all of those can cause a problem with the shipment. And so you want to make sure that the packing for them are right on cue. So it's got some examples here of this is probably the biggest non-biodegradable packing material you can use. It's those styrofoam like peanuts. And you'll see that there's less and less of those being used based on the high screams of packing should be recyclable. And when this gets to the end customer, then they have to deal with how to dispose of it. And so you have to take responsibility from the shipping point to use the right packing materials. And so when it gets to the customer, it's easier for them to recycle. I mean, I just found out by reading the package that Amazon will take every piece of packing that they send. They will, wherever you take your stuff to return it, like I return stuff to Kohl's, and there's a couple other places that they will let you just drop it off instead of wrapping something up and sending it back. But they said you can bring all your packing materials there too, and Amazon will pick that up to recycle it. So all of those bags, the bubble wrap bags and all the packing material, I'm going to put it to the test. So I take back, say, I can't remember the last thing I took back. I think it was a dog leash that I got for the puppy, and they sent me something for a cat, or I don't know what it was for, but I took back this little leash that might have took the size of a chiclet box to send me. And I gave them a pickup truck load of recyclable stuff that had Amazon stickers on it. And so Kohl's wasn't super happy about that, but they're like, yeah, we do take recycle, but would you please, bring it as you use it? I'm like, you think I'm the only customer that's going to start recycling now that they said that you folks would do that? So they have to make, some kind of a storage space for recyclable stuff. And that's where you get into the cost of recycling. It's handling it again. So when it gets back to Amazon through all these, holding it here, putting it in a truck for like a back haul, somebody's delivered all their Amazon stuff. And then they have a driver stop at Kohl's and say, bring us back all the returns on your way back to the warehouse. And then they got all that recycling in there too. So Amazon is still, once they get all of that material back to them, there's a process where it has to be shredded, or it has to be incinerated, or something has to happen to it before it's useful again. They can't just run it through a steam process to sanitize it and try to use it again. But these airbags, those little inflatable bags, that probably was the big breakthrough to keep from using a lot of packing material that's not recyclable. It doesn't weigh a lot. And because if I needed like 6 of those in a box, they're on a roll, I just air up 6 of them. If I needed 20 of them, which I got a shipment yesterday that it had like 30 of these bags in it. I don't know what they were thinking. They should have went to a smaller box. But if you need 30 of them, it's the same thing. They just keep blowing up the next section until they got it where it won't jar around. It keeps it straight. So, and it doesn't add weight to the material. If you had one that was full of this corrugated cardboard, the packaging would probably weigh a bit more. So there's regulations that are set out that says the packing material can't be more than 20% by volume or weight of the actual initial product. And so they could be fined if they're using too much packing material or too big a box. they could actually be fined, and there are no joke fines that they actually levy on them. So when we look at unit loads, they want to try to make them conform to a pallet. If you notice, this is a picture of, I think they're calling this a bag, fully automated stretch wrapper. And so you've got this found this platform that the pallet's set on. And then there's either like a motion that brings a bag over the whole pallet, and then it shrink wraps it, it heats it, so it makes it stick to it tighter. Or it would have a wrap machine that would go around and round in circles, up and down 2 or 3 coats of it to make it all stick together. That's just a major savings when it comes to having that shipment shift, something fall off a pallet, and it would destroy the product, and everything around it could be contaminated and destroy a whole truckload. And so spending this extra little bit of time and effort on this machinery and automation is how people stay in business. Is it has to be delivered either resellable or like new condition for the end customer. So they talk about master cartons or plastic totes that are used to package materials. I took some pictures in my lab today, so maybe I can share those with you if I can get this thing to turn on. We want our students to have access to what's going on in the industry. Yesterday, we got our drone in that's actually going to be able to fly and do inventory. And we just got authorized funding to buy an actual robot that goes in from pick slot to pick slot. So when you come into the lab, you'll get exposed to, and we'll show you how to operate that, and we'll show you how to best deploy it. So you'll get the whole setup on it. But I don't know if I can really share that well. I didn't want to trash it. Pictures from our lab. This is a barrel where we put liquids, or we can put different types of containers that would be protected by the barrel. We have different sizes of these totes that, depending on what you order, you would use packing material or not in them. So that one is like a medium, and then we have a small totes that are for smaller orders, and they're reusable. So when it goes out, it's usually going to go out to a customer that we expect to get that tote back, or we've got it set up where they get charged the cost of the tote as part of the shipment. And then if we have to go to corrugated, we've got a high selection of different size boxes, and these, of course, are
We're
setting
still
out all
stuck
our
on the
shelves.
stretch wrapper.
Say again?
We're still stuck on the picture of the stretch wrapper.
I thought I was showing it where my picture was. I shared my video. Did you see me showing you on my phone? Anybody catch that? See me?
No.
Okay. But that was examples I was just sharing there with you of our, and I can post those in our announcements of what's going on in our lab. That was my phone going in the trash can. Sometimes I feel like putting it there. Okay, so.
Ms. Jens, you have a question about the use of totes or use of postal service racks and stuff. Is there any should be like a law that other companies don't use other companies packaging, or the other way around, that there is any universal packaging that all
Okay, that's
different?
a good question.
Yeah.
Anything that has U.S. Postal Service is federal property, so it's not supposed to be used for anything other than moving mail. So they've got the monopoly on those containers, because your tax dollar is paid for it, and it shouldn't fall into private industry and be used for gaining profit. If it's not marked U.S. Postal Service or U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, whatever, a governmental agency that's provided that container, then those sizes of the containers that I was showing pictures of, maybe you'll see in a second here, they're universal sizes. And so, yeah, they can be reused by another organization once they receive it. But because of the cost associated with it, a cardboard box is like 0.011 cent or something, less than a penny. And unless you go try to move, then they're like $6 a box. But cardboard in mass quantities, you know, if I'm going to use that for shipping, is a lot cheaper than those plastic reusable bins. But depending on what I'm shipping, say I've got very fragile glass, or I've got pharmaceutical things that like syringes and things that, and I've only got like 2 of each item. So there's a mix of things that I want to protect. After I wrapped each one of those individually and put them in cardboard and then sent it to the hospital, they'd have all of this time spent opening these boxes, and then they got all of that recyclable packaging there. By using these small little crates, they can go straight to an operating room and they'll have all the items that they needed to produce, to fulfill that operation for that day. And so, and that kind of an internal supply and reverse logistics environment, when a hospital orders, tomorrow I'm going to need 6 operating room kits, I'm going to need 5 new patient kits, 500 gowns, whatever. It shows up in these totes, these reusable totes, and then the stuff that they used already, the totes are empty, that comes back to the warehouse for that hospital. So they have internal customers that it's the quickest and easiest recyclable, friendly way to do business. And they save all that money not buying cardboard or dealing with it at the end by having that tote come back and it's ready to go. And they do sterilize them. They run them through a ultraviolet steam environment. And so it's ready to go back into another surgical room with the supplies that are in it. So in a great world, we would all have these coming to our house, and there'd be a tote that they could take back with them when they delivered us. And we could take a lot of cardboard and plastic out of the system. And I believe that's being tried in a couple different parts of the country, where you get like a drone that delivers your stuff and it comes in a tote. And then it picks up the tote from your last delivery. If you've had other ones, if you don't have other ones, then the next time you order, it will be expecting that your old tote is at the place where the drone lands, so it can pick up the old tote and return it back. So that is something that's happening in the future. I think that we're getting away from a lot more waste in the packaging. So we got strapping, and sometimes if it's large items, say it's auto parts or like lawnmowers or something like that, and we're worried about it rolling off or falling off of a pallet, they'll strap these items to it. And it really does get deep about recycling. That's one of our major industry goals, is try to be carbon free or as much as possible. Everybody has a goal to try to keep as less crap going into landfills as we can. Labeling, you know, these are, you can print them out from your house and stick them on your packages. This look just like this one. And the information, of course, that's on this one is who's shipping it and where to, and the date that it left, and then what the weight is. And depending on what this, who you're dealing business with, this UPS code here has got that same information embedded in it. And if you're doing, say, a return, and everybody's ordered something they didn't want, and they send you a label, the other information in that barcode is telling what item should be in that package. And so when they scan it, when it comes in, they go, oh, somebody sent me back a garden gnome or whatever, and it's green and it's 3 inches tall, and it goes in this position in the warehouse. So after they inspect it and see that it's that item and it's not damaged, then they'll authorize like a reimbursement or a replacement, and then they'll start putting it back into the system. But for the most part, these retailers have a third person, a third party that handles their returns, and it never makes it back to their shelf. Once it goes out, let's say it cost me $5 for shipping to get this item to a customer, and then it wasn't right, and the item was $4. So shipping it back to me is going to cost more than the item was. And so a lot of times they'll say, just keep it, depending on what your track record is. they can see that you're not just ordering stuff and saying, no, I didn't want it, just so you can get it for free. But there were several items during Christmas that they said, just keep it instead of having me sending it back, because, I got a good track record of, I actually send the stuff back if it's not right. And so that's one way to deal with it, is just make it one way and forget it. The other way is they have a contract with, say, Big Lots or some kind of a auction site or something where returns are sold at a discount. And so if this was a $4 item, instead of them paying to have it brought back to them, they actually sell it to this auction site or this third party for the cost of postage usually. And so when you see things discounted at different sites, they're really just paying for postage. Okay.
I ordered a mattress, and like a memory foam mattress, and they come pretty shrink wrapped. Well, I unboxed it and everything, let it rise up and everything, and we found that it wasn't the right mattress. It was the soft one instead of a firm. So I called Amazon and told them about the problem, and they said, okay, just send it back. And I said, okay, how am I going to send it back? It's a king size mattress. I said, like, I don't have a box or anything to put this in. I said, do you want me to like saran wrap it? And so she put on pause for a minute. She comes back and she goes, you know what? Since it would be such a hassle to get it back to us, just go ahead and keep it and we'll send you out the correct one. So I said, well, what am I going to do with an extra mattress? She goes, you can burn it, you can donate it, you can do whatever you want with it, but we don't want it back. And I said, okay, all right.
Send that out to neighborhood or whatever one of those sites are and saying, hey, free, brand new, or, charge them whatever you want to for it. But yeah, that's a good example of the hassle. Where are they going to put this thing? I know that one of the companies that sells those mattresses, I think it's called Purple, that they actually will send a package with a pump that sucks the air, compresses it back down to its packing size, and then you put it in a box. So theirs are expensive enough, I guess, that they want them back. And I don't know who would buy a mattress that somebody else rejected. I don't know that I'd feel real sanitary about. Yeah, this went to a home in Oklahoma or something, and they said it wasn't, even if they didn't do anything with it, it's still not they can't sell it as new. They have to sell it as previously opened or returned or whatever. So I'm thinking they wouldn't have a high demand for, that particular product. That's a good example. Okay, so they want to check to make sure that they're verifying that the address and that the order is complete before they ship it out. And then the last thing that happens in our world as far as supply chain is loading it. And so there's a schedule, usually a transportation schedule, that's got what trailers are leaving at what time from what door. And if it's UPS or FedEx, this loading part is all they do. They unload it at one end of the building, and then they separate it to destinations. It's going to Georgia or Florida or California or whatever, or it's somewhere in Indianapolis and it's going to the east side, west side, or it's going to a certain block area from 116th to 123rd, or it's going out into a small town. They've got routes that are out in these little small towns in Indiana. So they bring it in, they sort it to the doors that are servicing those different geographical locations. And so it's pretty, we have to check the accuracy to make sure that it gets put on the right trailer, so that driver, when they are delivering it, has the right packages for the right customers. And this talks about different loading techniques. In this picture, it's got an inflatable dunnage bag that holds the pallets apart, and then the pallets are setting against the wall of the trailer so they don't shift. And if you were sending something cross country or even down some of these Indiana roads, those dunnage bags, they may cost them like 10 cents a piece. They buy them by mass rolls. And it's just like those inflatable bags that are inside boxes, only these are bigger. And sometimes they're reusable, because what did it touch? Shrink wrap. There's nothing funky about them. But they want to make sure that the load doesn't shift. And so the different techniques they talk about are if it's floor loading, This is things that usually can't be handled that well with machinery. Normally, these floor loaded things are put last, depending on where you work. They may say that they want them put first. But other things like that have this side up or fragile, or if they're real light items, you don't want to put a light item on a pallet and then stack something on top of it. And so they usually have those either loose or they put them on a different dedicated pallet that would signify that it's a light item, that nothing should be stacked on top of it. And so that becomes the second layer or third layer in a load, or it's in the back where it has to be hand unloaded. Palletized goods, it says if they were doing it by hand, it would take from 4 to 5 hours to unload these floor loaded, if it was a whole trailer. And if they're on pallets, it's something like 20 to 30 minutes. And if it was all the same things on pallets, it could be in like 5 minutes, because it's all coming off and it's all going to be staged at the same place to go to the same customer. So having something that's on a pallet, and that allows machines to get under it, and material handling greatly reduces the time that trailer is occupying a space and it's being loaded or unloaded. And then securing it. We have different things inside the trailer, like straps or bars or petitions or rope, airbags. They call them cargo walls, these petitions, to make sure that, say I got something heavy in the front, which is where you want heavy stuff, because if you hit the brakes and you got light stuff in the front, all the heavy stuff behind it gets pushed into it. So if you got your heavier stuff in the front, the worst thing that can happen is it just pushes forward towards the front of the trailer, the wall there. So having those kind of things anchored and petitioned off to where the lighter stuff's protected behind it, makes sure that it arrives in one piece. They talk about third-party carrier loading, and I've seen this in the food industry and automotive industry, where there's stuff that comes in, say from a ship. You got a container, and that container has no pallets in it. You know, if I was sent 10,000 light bulbs, they would want to fill that container up with 10,000 light bulbs, not 9,000 light bulbs and 10 pallets. You know, that those pallets take space, and in the case of the light bulbs, they'd weigh probably as much as the rest of the load. And where are you going to put them? They're going to crush the light bulbs. So they open this container up full of light bulbs. 10,000 light bulbs are in there. You know, a couple 100,000 cases stuff, and they're put in cartons. So now we got maybe 1,000 cartons. So they have they call them lumpers or loaders, that are actually people, these weightlifter guys that I recruited and ladies, that take the stuff off by hand and put it on a pallet right at the dock. And then it gets shrink wrapped and it gets moved to either another truck where it's cross docked from one whole load of light bulbs to just needing a pallet for one store, and then next store gets a pallet, or they put it on the shelf. But to be able to move it by machine, you need somebody to unpack that container that has no pallets and put it into either crates or put it on plastic or wood pallets and have the stuff loaded up in the warehouse. Talks about trailer spotting, and that's basically being able to maneuver a trailer back into a door. And for the most part, drivers they have to be able to do that to get their license. And if they're working for a trucking company, that's just a given that you know how to back a trailer. But when it's in say a very hectic environment where there's trucks coming and going all the time, and there's limited space for these trucks to wait, a lot of times they'll just say, drop your trailer. We will have a spotter come out there with like a smaller version of a truck, so that it's got windows all the way around it. And so it's easier for them to maneuver. Sometimes it's a truck that comes in forward with the fifth wheel, the hitch that's connects to the trailer, in the front of the vehicle. And so if they're backing up, they don't have to use mirrors or anything like that. They're driving straight into the door. And so part of managing a warehouse and its lot is having these spotters in the designated places to put trailers that are already loaded or trailers that are that need to be unloaded. You know, that whole yard management is a whole part of our, it's a position at every warehouse. And so that was not a real physical position. It's just like I got 3 or 4 folks that operate these spotters, and I got radio that tells me, hey, door number 6 is open. And so I tell the spotter, bring in trailer load 7 into door number 6. It's like being an air traffic controller for that warehouse. Okay, so we have one last video for chapter 5. Let's bring it over here, see if I can get this bad boy. And it's just 2 minutes, so we get spared some kind of a long, lengthy setup here. Let's get this one going.
Just as life does not stop at your business's door, your business does not stop once your product is sold. You may prefer to not think about the future of your products. You may think it's none of your business. In fact, you could be ignoring a profitable opportunity, since the resources in the products you sell today can be recovered and recycled into resources for products you will sell tomorrow. One option is to create a reverse logistics system on your own, where you take back the products that you sell to your customers. This may be easier to do if you are operating in a business-to-business operation. If, for example, you provide company offices with homemade apple juice, you could take back the empty bottles rather than letting your customer throw them away. You could formalize this process through a contract or systems like deposits. Once you get the empty bottles back, you just wash them and reintegrate them back into the supply chain. This is a simple case, but if your product is more complex, or if your business is too small to set up a reverse logistics circuit on your own, you can pool resources and have a shared organization that collects and recycles on your behalf. The following example from France is a good one. 6 main manufacturers of mobile homes have joined forces to collect, dismantle, and recycle old homes. This reverse logistics system is financed through an environmental contribution of 100 euros for each new mobile home sold. Now, whether you apply reverse logistics on your own, or if you partner with similar manufacturers, for certain waste flows, you don't even have a choice. Indeed, there is a principle in Europe known as extended producer responsibility, or EPR, according to which you're responsible for the products you place on the market at the end of their life. This is the case for a growing number of products, including packaging, electric and electronic equipment, batteries, etc. Under these requirements, you have to take back the products you sell yourself, or you have to join an organization which takes care of waste collection and recycling. Last but not least, be it mandatory or voluntary, be it on your own or with others, reverse logistics ensures that recovered resources feed loops that facilitate better supply, as was seen in the first part of the video. If you start including reverse logistics in your operation, your old products don't simply become waste, they become raw materials for a new product. You are now at the heart of a circular economy.
Okay. And that is the goal of where we're going. Europe is already ahead of us on this, but living, let me see if I can get that close. But that is the goal for reverse logistics. And your generation, your workforce that you're entering or that you're part of, that's probably going to be mandatory with the new legislation and new administrations focused on a green economy and a green everything. That's probably going to be a given in short notice that anything you sell, you're responsible for that product after customer use and to have some type of way to reclaim it and recycle it. But you've seen that one of the ways that they do that is with a deposit. And so let's say you buy a wash machine and it's $500. And they go, hey, that's a good deal. Let me get that. And then they say, oh, and it's a $500 deposit. And so you basically are paying twice the cost for the product with the promise that when you're finished using it, you will return it back to whoever sold it to you. And then you'll get your $500 deposit back. And one of my last purchases of HP system, I got the computer and the monitors, printer, everything, had a clause in it like that, that said that they would give me free 3-year service, warranty, and if anything happened to it, if I paid this amount, and I think it was something like $200 or $300 for all the components together. And if I returned them, or I didn't have any claims as far as having something fixed at the end of that 300 or that 3 years, that I would get that deposit or that amount of money back. So it's already starting. It's like for electronics, they know that that's going to be an area that's going to have to have a controlled reverse logistics. They're already taking initiative because they have to operate that way in Europe already. So they're already taking initiatives before it becomes a law that they have to do it. So I give them some corporate social responsibility kudos for being on the front line of that.
Mr. Yancey, I've got a question really quick. I was thinking about something. Do you think that they're taking that deposit money and maybe putting it into some sort of account and getting some sort of benefit while they're holding on to it, and that's kind of how they're profiting maybe? What do you think they're doing with that money?
They could just be putting it back into like a general fund, and they put it as a line item that says this unit was sold for $500. This wash machine was. The $500 deposit would go on a line item in accounting saying, okay, this is an accounts receivable, but in 3 years, it's going to have to be available to be refunded. And so they got 3 years to use your money any way they want to, really. Just
yeah,
like banks,
I would
when you got a
definitely be
savings account.
profiting some sort of annual percentage.
Yeah, I
rate
mean,
off
if
of that
it's
stuff.
they're saving money on borrowing it, they're getting it from you interest free. They could be using that 500 to make another wash machine that they sell for 500. They used your money to make a wash machine, but the end game is that they're going to be held responsible for where that old wash machine ends up. And they're trying to have you as a interested party in getting that wash machine back to them so that they can make sure that it gets recycled. They get all the components and they can use them again after they melt them down and remold them and all that. So it's sort of like an involuntary tax for us because we're not getting interest on our money sticking out there for 3 years. But it's very expensive to be green. I mean, some estimates are anywhere between 3 to 20 times more expensive to be green. So you got to pay for your commitment. I mean, that's why we're using these energies, and there's a lot of waste and everything now, is because it's cheap. And so now we're aware that that's not the way we need to be doing business. It's going to cost more to do business. And so we all want all these, there's no magic in it, the clean part of it, but to hold people responsible, and there's money involved in that responsibility, to overwatch of it.
Isn't
Okay.
it similar to like cell phones, how they buy back your cell phones though? If you spend $1,000 on a cell phone, you can trade it back in 2 years or whatever, and you get, X amount of dollars for it. They're taking those phones, they're basically deconstructing them, reusing the components, recycling them, and turning them into new phones to sell for $1,000 again.
Well, and a lot of times they'll take like a phone, they use it as a enticement for you to buy a new one. So let's say it costs them $300 for that $1,000 phone. And they say, we're going to give you a $300 credit for your old phone. Now they've got $600 in that phone you just paid $1,000 for. So they still made a 40% profit. Then they take your phone and they program it for 911 and they donate it to shelters, or they take your phone, and if it's functional, they repackage it and they sell it to a third world country that's just getting, they're 2 or 3 generations behind us in technology. And so they don't have as many phone towers and they don't have smartphone capabilities and all this stuff, but they still want to have phones. And so they'll take your $400, $300 phone that they invested in, and they'll sell it to a third world country for $500 or $600. So it's not them just taking it apart and using the components, the silver and the platinum and gold and stuff in it. if they can reuse it, if it's just not destroyed, you know, it hasn't been drove over by a garbage truck or something, then they actually reprogram it, they blank it out and reprogram it for resale. Okay, so our last chapter today is on inventory control. And we've probably hit on a lot of components of that through what we talked about today. Let's see if I can get this to disappear. I can't remember what I did to do that last time. This, nope. Okay, I guess I'm not. But there's different types of inventories. And we start off with raw materials, you know, wood, steel, copper, silver, chemicals. It's the components that may be part of a process for manufacturing or assembly. And so if you haven't been watching, wood, lumber has, the prices have went up 140% since the pandemic. So I'd planned to build this pole barn, you know, sort of like a 3-car garage size pole barn that I could put all my gardening implements and yard equipment and my boats in. And when I got the quote on it, it was going to cost me somewhere around $30,000. So I said, damn. Well, I waited too long. I went back to check on it. I said, well, okay, well, you know, I probably need to have that done before this winter. So I went back to him. I said, hey, when can you guys come out and start on this $30,000 pole barn? He said, oh, we don't have any of those. That one you looked at now is $60,000. So I'm out of the pole barn business. I don't need one that bad. But raw materials, the different steel and the ores, the like gold, silver, nickel, platinum, the things that are used in manufacturing process, all of those are on the upswing. And when you ask why, when you really ask why, is there that big a demand? They say that there is new regulations that tell them how they have to handle their, you know, environmentally conscious regulations. And with those regulations become enforcement or cost associated with making sure they're in compliance with those regulations. And so you could buy an item and let's say it's a board, and before it cost you like $4. There's now a compliance fee that they have to incorporate into that board. And now that board costs you $5. What was that dollar? It was not more board that this is raw material. They haven't even done anything with the board.
Is that going into like planting new
compliance.
trees or something? I don't understand.
You would think so, but the industry that is cutting trees down are planting trees. They already have regulatory requirements to replenish the whatever they cut with a like type of tree. So if they cut down oak trees, they have to replant oak trees. If they cut down pine trees, they have to replant pine trees. So that's already a given before they can remove anything, that they have a responsibility to replant it. No, this is bureaucracy. It's somebody that's sitting at a desk that's going, I wonder how many truckloads of wood have been shipped out of Virginia to go to Texas or whatever. Well, it went through 3 states, so each one of those had to be inspected, the load did. And when it got to Texas, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything harmful in that wood, like, you know, beetles or some type of insect that would infect trees in Texas. So we're going to quarantine it for like a week. And so now there's this cost for the company to keep it in an area while they're watching it to see if any bugs or anything come out of it. It's crap like that. It's just adding an extra layers and layers and layers of people touching something. And every time you touch something, there's a cost associated with it. I'm trying to remember the story about watermelons in China. There's something in the soil in China that vining crops don't do well there. I mean, they cannot grow watermelons. They may have like a small sterile soil or something, or they may be able to grow them indoors in a confined, you know, thing. But a watermelon takes a big, you know, area to grow in. And so they buy watermelons from us, and they're not going by boat because, you know, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, that's not a watermelon anymore. It's a mixed drink. And so they get flown there. And so they fly in watermelons. And there's this exorbitant cost for air flight for something large as a watermelon. You can't put a whole lot of them on an aircraft. Then it lands in China, and then it's inspected at the port, the airport where it came in. And so, okay, these are watermelons, and they're going to go into these 7 different districts in China. So they divide up the load to wherever it's going. There's a workforce that does that. Then each one of those different places inspects it, make sure that there's, you know, no funk that came with watermelon, no spiders or no snakes or anything. So the next day it goes to another place where it says, oh, now they're going to go to these different cities within these provinces. And there's a workforce that comes and gets it and moves it to another location, another staging area. One watermelon employs about 40 people, one watermelon. It has to be touched that many times. And it's to create employment. And so here's jobs that could be done by automation and have one person do it. 40 people are touching this watermelon. By the time it gets to the consumer, the watermelon costs about $70. Who's buying a $70 watermelon? You're not. They're slicing this watermelon up. They're actually buying slices, you know, like a pizza slice, and they're paying somewhere around $3 to $4 for a pizza slice of watermelon. But it's a high demand commodity, and they can't grow it there cheaper than that. And so we meet China's need for employment. We meet China's need for this watermelon they can't grow. But because of all of these steps where people have been involved in the process of getting it to the market, to the consumer, it's made the cost of it almost prohibitive. And so when we look at, oh, damn, this year watermelons went up to $6. They can't buy a seed for watermelon for $6. So, you know, it's a different market construct. Us, we can grow them. It's locally grown in Indiana. There, it's flown in, and then it gets put through their supply chain, which is not based on cost and efficiency. It's based on how many people can we employ, because it's a communist country. Everybody, they want to have a job. They're not looking at making it a streamline. They're trying to make more jobs. And so it's a whole different focus on how they run their supply chain.
But is it something,
yeah.
Is it something, the other way around, like exotic fruit that came to US or something that does not grow? Is it the same thing? Same idea?
Yeah, I mean, say they grow a passion fruit that doesn't take a vine, it comes off of a tree or something. When that plane lands in China, we're probably, because it's conditioned, like it's got climate control in it and stuff, it's probably going to be used for basically the same purposes, to bring back some kind of fruit or vegetable that it's a high demand in the US that we can't grow as efficiently or as much of as that they can. So, and you've been to Trader Joe's. If you've been there, you see that you can buy some expensive exotic food, and so but it's still at a much less, I mean, 300% less markup than what you would encounter if you were buying that product and our product in China. And that's why we have this trade deficiency that's going on, where we sell, say, 1 million of something to China. They buy the million of something, and then they sell us 300 million. They sell 300 times as much stuff to American consumers as we sell to their consumers. And so they're getting more of our wealth, and they're shielding their market from our imports. So it's just not a real fair setup that we have going on with China right now. It's been that way for, I guess, Nixon, 1976. It's been that way for 50 some years-ish. So back to the class, we got raw materials. And then once something is started into a process where it's going to be created as like a end product, something that can be sold, from the time it's put into the process where it's cut, it's painted, it's got drill holes in it, it's heated, it's molded, it's anything, it's a work in progress. And they have a trick question on this one where it says, if you had a table that'd been finished, you know, it's got the stain and everything on it, and it's been inspected, which part of the inventory is it in? And people would think, well, if it's already got a finish on it, then it's finished. But no, if you read what a finished good is, it says, consists of inventory that comes to a warehouse or distribution center packaged, that's one of the key words, and ready to ship. Finished goods inventory will be the primary focus of this chapter. But finished goods doesn't necessarily mean that that's went through manufacturing and it went from a chunk of steel, now it's a starter for an automobile. It has to be in a box, ready to sell. It has to be prepared to sell or in some type of a shipping type of package before it's finished. So at the end of your manufacturing, you don't get paid for stuff that's still being put together. You only get paid when you have a finished good, something that they can sell or they can use as a component, a part or something. So if I was a manufacturer that took steel in and all I did was make nuts and bolts, then when the nuts and bolts got put in some type of a package, so here's 10,000 nuts and bolts, then I'd get paid. Anywhere between raw materials and processing, I don't get paid. So the definition you want to remember about finished goods is it's packaged and prepared to be sold. So anything else is either raw material, and they'll have a question about that, wood, steel ore, raw metals, they'll say belong to which type of inventory. And then they'll say something about boards cut to a specific length and then painted belong to which type of inventory. It's still work in progress until those boards are packaged and labeled and ready to ship, or they're part of something like a Kia, where it's a kit that goes into like a table or chair or something of that nature. So three different classifications for inventory. Then we got different levels of inventory management. We got aggregate inventory. It means moving individual items through inventory, and then the turn rate is a key component of it. So you can take a simple formula of dividing inventory turn into the total dollars shipped by the inventory on hand plus safety stock. So let's say I tell the story about my brother's used car dealerships in Lexington. Have I told you this story? Okay,
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
it's a quickie. So he had a brand new Ford dealership in Lexington. And then from the trade-ins, he had the AM lot. I think I did tell you this. And then he had a PM lot. So he had one that was open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. He called that AM autos. And then he had one open from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and that was called PM auto. And on the and he had, like, I'm thinking 350 new cars on his new car lot. And so each month, let's say the new car lot would sell 100 cars. And so he'd sell 1/3 of his inventory. He'd turn over 1/3 of his inventory every month. And then on his AM lot, he had 30 parking spots. He had 2 rows of 15. And so out of those 30 cars, let's say he sold all 30 of them. So every time somebody turned in a car or he bought a used car or somebody traded something in, he'd put it on this AM lot. And so he'd sell about 1 a day there. He'd sell 30 a month. And then on his PM lot, he only had 10 car spots. But on his PM lot, he'd sell 50 cars a month. And so that 10 car lot would have regenerated 5 times. They'd have to be restocked because of the demand of cars that he was selling in the PM. And so he's actually making more money on a car lot that only had 10 spots than he was in his new car lot that had 300 spots because the inventory was turning over more and more. And if it's a little known fact that you may not know when you're buying cars, that a new car dealer is kind of limited as to how much profit they can make. It's usually somewhere around 1.5% is all they can make on a new car. There's no restrictions on how much a used car dealership can make. And it's normally somewhere around 200% profit. So you buy a new car, it retails for 20,000, and their markups and everything they add to it, it costs 22,000. You buy a used car, its value is 10,000, and the markups and everything that they put on it, they sell it to you for 20,000. You know, they'll have some other thing where no money down and you can pay a weekly payment. You know, your credit may not be that great, or they have a vehicle that you want and it's still 20,000. If I bought it new, it'd be 60,000. So you're thinking you still got a good deal, but there's no law that says, hey, you can't charge more than 2% profit on a used car. It's whatever you're willing to pay. On a new car, there's restrictions where they can't do that. But the moral of the story is on his inventory, he had just a third of the inventory turnover on the big lot, the new one. He had his AM turnover like twice, but his PM with 20 spots or 30 spots, with his PM with only 10 spots was turning over 5 times. And so he actually changed the AM and PM lots, and he gave them more spaces to the PM. People leaving work, folks that were seeing his lot was well lit and he had new cars every day. He'd switch them around. Even if he hadn't sold it in a month, that car would make it to the front row and then it'd make it to the second row. And then he put it in a different spot on the front row just to make it look like it was a new car that wasn't there the day before. But when he switched them where he had more spaces available, still the PM lot was the most dominant sales lot. So, and that's marketing, but it also goes back to aggregate inventory management. Which one of these was making him more money, and how should he deploy his limited resources, his trade-ins and his spaces that he has? Okay. This kind of shows how inventory control works. You got the warehouse management system we spoke about several times, where you are starts in the receiving of the inventory, and then there's a barcode system that actually lets them scan as to what that inventory is. And then they have pick and pack. It's basically where they're going to put it in the warehouse to pack it on shelves, and then where they're going to actually pull it off the shelf when it's ordered. So then they have reports that, like in some cases, the reports every hour to tell what the inventory is in the warehouse. Because say their customers had ordered a big sale item, and now their warehouse doesn't have any. They sold it all. Everything was on the shelves all the way up to the ceiling in the warehouse. They just got a report that says, whenever you get down to 20 pallets, you're supposed to reorder. And so you never do run out. You got this safety number that's set into your inventory. And so before you get to 0, it triggers a replenishment. And so you got this item that's been on sale. Now we're down to just 20 pallets of it. And you're like, uh-oh, time to replenish that, because I don't want us to run out. We could lose customers. We can make people unhappy, and we can sell more of them if we got them. And so then it goes into inventory management, where they say, hey, we need you to expedite, or we need this 70 cases delivered to us by close of business, because we have expectation that we're going to sell everything that we have in the place, and we don't want this empty shelf when people are asking for that product. And so that's the cycle that goes through this inventory management, where we're reordering to replenish it, and we're making sure that all of our stuff gets out of there to the right people, the right place. And we're also managing things like, oh man, back there on shelf Z, A, B, C, D, it's in the very last row. on the very end of that aisle, we got something that's been sitting back there for a year that has dust on it. What is it doing sitting in our warehouse for a year and we haven't sold any of it? We need to get it out of our warehouse. And so they'll actually identify through these reports and through inventory management. And when we talk about ABC inventory, A is the high value stuff that sells all the time. It's about 20% of the inventory. B is the mid-level stuff that sells on a regular basis. And C is just crap. It's stuff that every now and then somebody will want one of, and it usually doesn't have a high value. And it's usually about 20% of the inventory. So once they identify something that's a C and they see that nobody's buying them anymore, say it was, this is probably one that's real life. Say it was a hula hoop and nobody bought a hula hoop before the pandemic. In over a year, they haven't sold any hula hoops. And so they said, well, we need to get that stuff to a third party because it's that part of our inventory is no longer in high demand. Then the pandemic shows up and now it's become a new craze. They've got hula hoop fever, you know, different styles of them that do lights and make noises and everything. It made a comeback. And so now that moves from being a something never sold up to a high demand A inventory or B inventory. So that warehouse management system helps them classify what's selling and what's not, and what's in high demand and what's not, so they don't waste their space in the warehouse. We've heard this term just in time. And it basically means I don't have to, as a producer or a retail space, I don't have to have my own warehouse because I can order something like I was telling you about. We got down to like 20 pallets and we expect that we're going to need more. Well, they can deliver those the next day just in time. So then I didn't have to keep this extra 80 or 90 pallets on hand. It's the ability for transportation and coordination and technology has allowed us to do this. So if I've got a manufacturing plant and I need wood and I need nails and glue and paint, as I'm producing furniture or bookshelves or whatever it is, I know how much of each of those components I need to make a run for that day. And so just in time, our truck shows up, it gets unloaded, gets put by the machines that are going to need it that day. They make the furniture and the shelves. I didn't have to have any inventory. All I had was what was used that day to make the furniture. And so there's a reduced cost for me because I don't have to have an inventory. And a lot of our small businesses are successful because they don't have to absorb the cost of inventory. They just order items as needed for customer demand. So say I had an online store and I'm selling personalized t-shirts and there's some big event that's coming to Indianapolis that people would want t-shirts for. So I put my ad out there on Amazon or on some other site that people buy things on, and I sell 500 t-shirts. Then I order the t-shirts from whoever's actually making them for me, and I tell them, send it to these 400 customers. So I'm out of the shipping business, I'm out of the making t-shirt business, I'm out of the storing t-shirt business. And if I had ordered, say, 1,000 t-shirts, I'd have 600 of them sitting back there that I couldn't use or couldn't sell. So it's taken the cost of the inventory, the risk away, that I've got something that's obsolete that somebody wouldn't want. And it's got me out of the shipping and storage altogether. A third party does it. Now they're going to charge me for that, for holding it and for manufacturing it and for shipping it. But my margin of profit, say it's just 25 cents on each of one of those t-shirts. What did I do that cost me 25 cents in labor or 25 cents in capital? Nothing. And so that was a low number because you're probably going to make $1 on everything, on anything that you touch. But just say I sold those 400 t-shirts in an hour. And all of that stuff was sent to my supplier to take care of the just-in-time everything. I just made $400 an hour. They made the rest of that t-shirt cost. If it was $20, they made $16 to get their product manufacturing and shipping to make their $5. they get the rest of it. But I made $1 and I didn't do anything. So that's how small businesses that are using just in time are staying in business, is they're letting people who can do those other heavier burden things like warehousing, shipping, manufacturing, a third party's taking care of that. All I'm doing is I'm marketing it. I'm finding somebody who wants it, and I'm collecting their information and their money. And then I'm having a third party take care of the delivery of the good or service that I sold. So it's the right amount. They talk about for just in time, it's the right amount, it's the right material, it's the right condition, it's in new shape, and it goes to the right time or place. So you really do have to have excellent supplier relationships. So that's third party that you're relying on to make those t-shirts. You have to know that it's going to be a quality t-shirt, that they've got a good reputation, and that they back their actual item when it gets to your customer. You have to know that it's going to get there in the right condition. It's not going to have a greasy handprint, or it's not going to be, the transfer is not going to be blurred or burnt or whatever. And if you say you're going to deliver it before the Super Bowl or before the concert, it has to get to the right customer at the right time. And so those are a lot of heavy demands and a heavy risk that you're allowing a third party to do for you. So there is some risk in your reputation or your business when you allow that to happen. But it's picking the right partners to be your suppliers for just in time. We sucked big time when the pandemic hit. We'd have all these manufacturers that were making things at a lower cost in China and Malaysia and South Korea and Vietnam, all of these different places that were actually had factories because they had a lower regulation, or they have lower costs involved in labor. And so this just in time, our companies outsourced it, or they said, hey, we're going to hire you to make our t-shirts. And so when the pandemic come around, they were doing things like making medicine, and they were making masks, and they were making all the stuff that we needed for the pandemic. And when we said, hey, we need a boatload of that stuff like yesterday, China needed it for their own population. So they basically said, it probably takes about a year to get that to you. So there's that. And our folks who've been using just in time were panicking, because how are we going to get medicines, and how are we going to get all this gowns and gloves, and there was a shortage. We had a national stockpile. In other words, if we ever went to war with everybody, we need to have a supply of stuff so we don't depend on them, the people that we might be going to war with, to give us what we need. And the national stockpile was looted previously for another pandemic scare. And they look, that stuff was in storage for 15 years and we never needed it. So the current administration that rated it for the use for that almost pandemic, they didn't resupply it. And so we already started with what we thought would be like a war stock, if you want to call it that, of masks and gloves and gowns and medication that was down about half what it was supposed to be. And so we had to have people like folks that manufactured t-shirts started making masks. Folks that had a restaurant that was closed, they started making kits so that you could do tests for COVID. They made COVID test kits out of like the swabs and the solution and the little containers. Restaurant owners became entrepreneurs and said, well, since my employees can't wait tables, I want to keep them employed. A couple restaurants in Indianapolis went nationwide making these test kits for COVID, and they kept all of their employees, and they're still doing it. So just in time, it's a great concept, but if you rely on third party, that there's an ocean between you and them, and something like this happens, not so good. So the lessons learned in the pandemic is the just in time is going to be from suppliers, domestic suppliers, stateside, people that we can get to from another state But we'll still have just in time as a concept because we don't want all of these stores building their own warehouses. We'll still have just in time is used, but our suppliers are changing. And so manufacturing is moving to the US so we can make masks and we can make gowns and gloves and all that, and not count on somebody across an ocean doing that for us. That's why you're going to have all this opportunity in our area, because every one of those supply chains, those warehouses and manufacturing need transportation managers, they need operations managers, they need supply chain managers, they need procurement managers, they need quality control, they need process improvement. So all the things you're learning in your courses in our degree program are immediately employable. And it's only going to be a higher and higher demand, which means more money for the few people that are qualified are going to have higher paying opportunities. So you're in the right place at the right time when it comes to this industry. I explained the ABC inventory to you earlier. FIFO and LIFO. Somebody wants to take a crack at what FIFO means?
First in, first out.
And what LIFO means?
Last things first out.
Okay, so
I
let's
mean,
think about a perishable. Let's like pumpkins. It's coming up close to the holidays. We sell a bunch of pumpkins in October for Halloween, and then we sell a bunch of pumpkins for November for Thanksgiving. So we got pumpkins. Well, the first ones in are going to be put behind the next shipment. I mean, they're going to be brought into in front of the next shipment. So let's say I have pumpkins that are 5 days old. I've had them in warehouse for 5 days. I'm starting to get a little leery here because the shelf life might be 30 days, but it still needs to get to the stores and still needs to get to the consumer. And so I got 5-day-old pumpkins. Well, I just got another new shipment of pumpkins. So the first pumpkins I got in that are 5 days old, they're getting shipped out. So first in was those 5 days ago pumpkins are going to be the first ones out. And so when it comes to rotating the inventory, you want to make sure that your oldest stock is sent out first, just to ensure that your inventory stays valid, and that if something comes up, when will we use last in, first out? It wouldn't be for perishables, would it? Let's say it's technology. I got iPhones. I got iPhone 6s. And the iPhone 12s went on sale. And well, I just got a shipment in of iPhone 12s. And I look and I say, well, if I ship out these iPhone 6s, who's going to buy them? I've allowed my inventory to become obsolete. In other words, there's no market for it. There's no demand for it. And so the last thing I got was these iPhone 12s. They're going to be the first thing that goes out. And so in technology, and there's other like style, you know, like different changes, like the fall and the spring.
Nike,
clothing.
Adidas, yeah.
Yeah. The last thing, the new fad, or what just got on a award show or a TV show, or what some athletes wearing, or the newer phones, that's got the highest demand. And so the last thing that you get in will be the first thing that gets shipped out. There's a cost associated with that, because now your old inventory, you're going to have to take a loss and get rid of it. So because it's no longer has the value that it did when you put it into your inventory. So FIFO, LIFO, that's going to be on the test. Okay, when to order? We got different ways that you're going to order. There's, for most parts with the technology, it's like an hourly thing. Every hour they know what has came in and out of the inventory and what needs to be replenished. But it could be a cyclic, is what they're talking about here. Cyclic ordering is time-based. Items are ordered based on anticipated usage, and then inventory levels are monitored between ordering times. So let's say that every Wednesday I order a truckload of eggs for my store, because historically people buy them on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday for the weekends. And so Wednesday's just the right spot to have them on hand for the people who were going to buy them for Thursday and Friday. And then there'll be a few left for the people who come in on Monday and Tuesday before I reorder them on Wednesday, before they get delivered. And so Cyclic is looking at the patterns of your customers and responding to it as to when you would reorder. Now, say sometime during that week, like Easter is occurring on Sunday, and my Cyclic order says I've got enough space in my shelf for 500 dozen eggs. And on that Thursday before Easter, I sell all of our eggs. And so am I going to have that shelf empty for Friday and Saturday where more eggs could be sold for Easter? And then my people come in Monday morning looking for their eggs. They're not going to be there either, or Tuesday, until they get replenished on Wednesday. So there are times that cyclic ordering doesn't work because you veer off of the historical demand. And that's when you have to make a decision. When it drops down below a safety stock, like, uh-oh, I only got 100 dozen eggs left. That's only going to do me for the next 4 hours. Let me order another 500 dozen. Fixed order quantity system is order based on quantities instead of time. And so this one we ordered on Wednesdays, basically because of the demand cycles. We knew that was the best time to get eggs on the shelf. This fixed order quantity goes straight by the numbers. And so at the checkout counter, each time something's scanned, let's say for some reason, people just started buying baked beans. It's going to be a nice weekend, 80 degrees Thursday, if you didn't know, and they want to grill out. And unexpectedly, people are buying a bunch of baked beans for grilling out this weekend. Well, at the checkout counter, it's letting the warehouse management system, the inventory management system know that, hey, that 50 cans of beans is down to 10 cans of beans, a 10 can of beans. I like that. And so that number triggers a replenishment. In other words, give me another 40 cans of beans so I can get that shelf full again, because this is just Wednesday and people are going to be grilling this weekend. So there's one that's a time and day, it's cyclic, and there's one that's fixed order, that's by number. And they call this material requirement planning, MRPs. And so you have a software system that just counts numbers of stuff in inventory. It's all part of a larger system, but this material requirement planning is like if I'm building a house, I know every shingle, every nail, and every board that it takes to build a house. I know how much PVC pipe, what size, how many joints, elbows, and extensions and valves. All of that I know that goes into building a house would be a material requirement planning issue to get all of that stuff to the location that I'm building that house. And so if you put that out of the construction into an inventory for a store, it's the same thing. Like Mother's Day is coming, so they know what kind of inventory Mother's Day looks like, and they start putting together a change in what current inventory is to meet that demand. So they do a material requirement planning for the inventory. There's different ways that they can keep track of it. They got a manual count, and this is like a handheld thing that they go and they beep beep to each one of the different shelf items. They got an automated count, and sometimes this can be used by just count. When stuff comes in, it goes under like a halo that tells how much came in. It got read by an RFID tag, and then when it leaves, it goes out the same process. So automation tells us what the balance should be. So they can manually count it, or we can use automation. But at some point, we're going to have to validate, is it really what we think should be out there? Or let's say you thought you had 100 of something on the shelf and it was lobsters, and it was the setting out back at the exit door, and 100 of those lobsters got carried out of the building, and you didn't know it. Your system saying I got 100 lobsters back there. somebody goes to get it and they go, no, you got no lobsters. So they have to do some kind of a check to say, well, where'd those 100 lobsters go? So they can do a random count. And this could be something as simple as, okay, I'm in charge of inventory. I'm going to go out. They could just roll a dice, and it's 2 dice. And whatever the numbers that come up, like 1 and 2, I'm going to go out to aisle 12 and I'm going to inventory everything on it. So randomly, they can just pick something, and that kind of it's not an exact control mechanism. In other words, they could roll the dice 3 days later and it comes out to the same number. They go back out and they inventory the same thing. So that's not very efficient. Then we got cycle count. And so this is going back to ABCs, where A items, the high demand, high value, are counted 8 times a year. B items, they're counted 4 times a year. C items are counted 2 times a year. And so they can put a value on what that item is. Like it's something that's in high demand, I'll inventory it more often. If it's something that's not so high demand, I'm going to inventory it quite a bit less. And this is usually what's used in industry, is this cycle count with ABC. But then you could use wall to wall, where you physically check everything in the building. And so you start from aisle, let's say there's 12 aisles. And so you're going to inventory 1 aisle each month. And by the end of the year, you've inventoried everything in the place, but you only did it 1/12 of it each month. And so that sometimes they just roll it to 12 or 10%. And so then they're going to get to see more of the inventory, because 120% of the inventory would be looked at. But you could do it by breaking it down to physically looking at 1/12 of it each year. And then you divide that by 4, the inventory each week. Then you divide that by 5, the inventory so much a day. And so inventory can be a precision thing, where they keep in track of what's physically on the shelf and what should be on the shelf. And then they make an adjustment to make sure the automation is reflecting the true numbers. So you got information they capture with handheld devices, they capture with automation. Within that, you've got signage and labeling that tells you what aisle you're on and what type of product that should be in there with the labeling. So we already have talked a little bit about reverse logistics through the video and the questions that came up with that. So I think we've got that knocked down. The inventory, you want to remember the 3 types of it. And then you want to remember that when it comes to auditing, that there's different ways that we can do that: a cyclic count, a wall-to-wall. One of them they count based on time, the other one they count based on the number. So the only thing they may have that we didn't cover in the reverse logistics was some of the reasons that there's product returns. And we've got poor quality of the product, damaged or defective products, unneeded inventories from over forecasting or over demand. They order too much of something. Seasonal inventories, all the Christmas stuff's not on the shelf, it's somewhere else returned. Out-of-date inventories, iPhone 6s, gone. Remanufactured or refreshed products. And so they could have, say, a computer that got sold, and then when they got it home, that says, well, it's got Windows 7 and Windows 10 is what the operating systems are supposed to be. So they bring those computers back and they recondition them and they upgrade to make sure it's got the right operating system on it. So the return goods can be handled in different ways. They can be returned to the inventory, which is normally not the case, but in some cases, say you got a customer service desk at Walmart, somebody buys a TV, and then they come back 2 or 3 days later, they haven't even opened it, and they said, my wife said no. Then after they check the packaging and everything to make sure it hasn't been opened or there's still a TV in there, they could put it back on the shelf. If it's refurbished, they say, hey, I bought this TV and for some reason the cable hookup wouldn't work, or the wireless part, I couldn't get it to hook into my router, then they'll send it for repair, refurbish it, and then they'll resell it. or they sell it to alternative markets. That's where they send it to like Big Lots or to third world countries, or some, they have a market set up that would buy the stuff that maybe wasn't in high demand there, or it's broken down and recycled that way. So we followed through on the sustainability. We talked extensively about that when we got into the reverse logistics. I think we were good on that. We talked about the 3 different types of inventory extensively. So I think we got chapter 5 covered pretty much. Let's go ahead and stop our recording.